Good afternoon, everyone, and a very warm welcome to the enlightening episode of the CIO Gurukul webinar. Thank you to each one of you for joining this session today. My name is Jatinder Singh, and I'm delighted to be a host for this session. As all attendees of today's session are undoubtedly aware, artificial intelligence or AI is widely recognized as a transformative force driving digital evolution. It guides organizations toward competitive advantages by amplifying customer experiences through uh, AI-powered initiative, and of course, it guides organization toward competitive advantages by unleashing disruptive capabilities, facilitating proactive issue prediction and pattern recognition. Consequently, organizations are empowered to address concern preemptively, paving the way for more efficient operations and, of course, enhanced customer satisfaction. One of the most exciting aspects of AI in recent time is the integration of AI and machine learning in cybersecurity. That's revolutionizing how organizations protect against cyber threats. Today's session aims to provide IT leaders with an in-depth exploration of the current and future role of and AI and ML in cybersecurity, with some practical insights from our speakers, including challenges, successful use cases, real world applications, and the way forward. Well, while AI has the potential to revolutionize cybersecurity, it's extremely critical that addressing its challenges needs to be taken carefully to ensure that it offers accurate and beneficial outcomes. Overcome these challenges can enable organizations to harness the full potential of AI in protecting the digital assets and combating emerging cyber threats. In our session today, our experts will deliberate and share insights on adoption landscape in enterprise cybersecurity, role of AI and ML solution in addressing potential security threats, scale and speed, how AI and ML system can process and analyze data at scale and speed, continuously learning and adapting to emerging threats, thereby augmenting their effectiveness over time. And of course, some of discussing concerns related to data privacy, biases in AI models, and ethical consideration in AI-driven surveillance and cybersecurity. In addition, we will also talk about how AI and ML will shape the future of cybersecurity policies, standards, and practice. Well, before we delve deeper into our discussion, this is just a friendly reminder to all participants that you can submit your questions using the Q&A chat window. We will address these questions during the dedicated Q&A session with our panel of experts after the discussion. To kickstart our discussion, I'm delighted to introduce our first guest for today, Mr. Vamsi Krishna Ithamraju, Chief Technology Officer at Axis Mutual Fund. Vamsi brings over 2 decades of invaluable experience in the technology sector, having held tech leadership roles at organizations such as Neo Growth Credit, Deloitte Consulting, Credit Access Asia, and Infosys. Please join me in extending a warm welcome to Vamsi Krishna Ithamraju. Greetings, Vamsi. A very warm welcome to you, and thank you for joining us.
No, my pleasure, Jatinder. Thanks for having me here.
Yeah. So, Vamsi, these are very interesting and, of course, transformative times. I would like to initiate the discussion. If you could throw some light on how have AI and large language models are transforming traditional cybersecurity practices, and what are the main advantages of leveraging AI in cybersecurity?
Sure. I think generative AI, more than AI in itself, has been the flavor of the season. A season extending more than a year now, and there doesn't seem to be an immediate end. Uh, so while there are immediate use cases that come to your mind in terms of how generative AI can help augment content preparation, there are many teams in any given corporate which thrive on content, right? Marketing functions, sales functions, people who are directly interacting with customers, they thrive on content that can be readily exchanged with customers to enhance their knowledge of the products that you're selling. Therefore, there is a immediate use case that people find. The second kin to that is on collaboration. How internally you can use a lot of these generative AI capabilities to synthesize large amount of data, summarize it for quick insights. Somebody who doesn't have time to go through uh, you know uh, 3 pager, 4 pager summary of a committee meeting can simply use a Gen AI based platform to get a synthesized summary of it, and also figure out if there were any action items corresponding to him or her, right? And therefore get to action quickly. While these are immediate use cases that come up to on the top of anybody's mind, interesting times now, as against Gen AI being an area that cybersecurity leaders watched closely and with suspicion, and of course for all the right reasons. The paradox is Gen AI could, as a technology in itself, could help these very cybersecurity leaders in analyzing huge amounts of data, huge amounts of events, logs that are generated. It's interesting to note that cybersecurity leaders are finding a use case for themselves, right? As against the historical process of just giving approvals to different functions. Today, I see cybersecurity leaders enjoying the fruits of generative AI as a capability. So that's a very welcome change. That's a very welcome change that we see. I think this also has to do with certain org structure that you develop. Traditionally, most see, I can speak for BFSI because I have been a BFSI loyalist for my entirety of the career, which is now circa 21 years. Uh, See, in BFSI, cybersecurity was largely a CISO-led function, similar to any other function. But then the CISO herself would have had regulation as one good chunk of work that they carry out. So what that means is there is only a very very finite amount of time which is left for innovation and for working closely with the business. If you look back at technology teams earlier, the way we used to work in waterfall model, traditional waterfall based software development life cycle. You took one step at a time and you went through the entire project life cycle, right? They were sequential in nature. Then there came a time when we started creating these agile pods. Agile and Scrum became the way of delivering software. I see a similar need arising even in cybersecurity space. While you have the cybersecurity leadership, you have the CISO who has an eye on threat landscape, who has an eye on regulatory landscape, what's happening with regulations, and how do we comply with all of this. We also need somebody who has the background of information security as a subject matter expertise, but has the a finer understanding of agile, Scrum ways of working, and therefore can work with business closely on their use cases, right? And then apply his infosec knowledge real time to see whether something can be delivered, something can be approved, and what is the controlled environment that is required to do that,
Yeah.
right? So I see this as a very, very welcome change.
Yeah, yeah,
Interesting times, Chetan.
yeah, yeah, of course. I think the overall ecosystem is still evolving, and of course, the future is unpredictable, and a lot to learn from seasoned leaders like you. And of course, we need to look beyond the obvious as well. Uh, uh, so the next question I would like to probably, if you could share some insights on some of the practical use cases or application where you have seen or you have personally deploy, uh, AI and ML
Sure.
specific to cybersecurity initiative, and what have become the key learnings?
For sure. See, for one, we have set up an environment which is completely isolated from the production environment, right? So most of our generative AI use cases are run in a very controlled environment, at least for a 90-day period, to make sure that there is no divergence from what you expect the technology to deliver for you, and the fact that there is no data leak happening, etc., etc., before you actually give it to a certain function. Even when we do that, it is only given to a defined number of users with only read access and no write access at this point of time, at least, right? The use cases for us, if you look at it, we are an asset management industry. Asset management industry thrives on research, investment research, right? uh, for us to pick those right the right industry, the right space to invest, etc., there's a lot of content which is available, as a generic user, as a generic netizen, if you have yourself exposed to so much of today there is a data overload, right? Information overload everywhere. We have the WhatsApp university, and then you have got all sorts of downloads from social channels, etc., etc., right? So in this kind of a scenario, how do we actually enrich the investment managers and the research analysts with content which can be curated for insights? How can they not be lost in the juggernaut of this whole information overload? That's where I think Gen AI really helps us, right? So when you have for example, let's take a quick example. A research analyst can quickly go use a Gen AI tool, whether it is the M365 Copilot, or whether it is the Azure AI bot that you built for yourself. It can help you since, for example, if a research analyst wants to start his day, looking at what has happened in the coal industry, right? The manual ways of working would involve going through multiple industry reports, right? Ranging from, let's say, a money control to an MSCI to a Bloomberg to a Reuters to, the list is literally endless, correct? So it's extremely time consuming for a research analyst to do this. And even when it does it, capturing all this knowledge for reuse becomes even more tricky. So this is where we have seen a practical application of Gen AI. So most of the data that is consumed, for example, the filings that are done on the exchanges, the BSE, NSE filings, or the Ministry of Corporate Affairs data. You look at all the public information that is available, right? This is not private to the enterprise. It's available for you, it's available for me, it's available for a research analyst. So these are public source of information which can be plugged in into a Gen AI tool for synthesis and give you that summary. So this is a fine use case for us.
Yeah, I mean,
right? So that's one example. The second example is where, yeah, yeah. The second example is where you have corporate functions such as, for example, the human resources department, right? Let's imagine the use case of a large bank or a large services company with tens of thousands of employees. At any given point of time, there are many hiring mandates that the recruitment team, the talent team is working on. One of the first tasks that they do is to come up with a job description, right? A job description is a lengthy affair, and if it was to be done right, assuming that it's done in the right spirit, it can get time consuming, right? But at the same time, it's a mundane task. All you need to do is to know what skill set you're looking for, what experience level are you looking for, what kind of domain knowledge you're looking for, and a job description can be crafted fairly easily, right? So this is where I think again there's a use case that we are seeing, right? The third is with marketing functions. If you look at the marketing functions, they thrive on creating collateral, right? Much of this collateral has to do with how the marketing teams can go and evangelize the products, right? That's one. The second use case is around newer incubations. When you incubate a new business, such as, let's say, an offshore business in our context, right? It's a very small team. It's not a team that's already full of research analysts, and it has the nitty-gritties of a wholesome ecosystem, right? It's just one or two people doing the 0 to 1 game. So they don't want to spend that little time that they have on their hand in creating content, right? So that's again where Gen AI is coming. The limited experience that we have had so far in kind of getting these use cases verified as a proof of concept or as a pilot is that while the Gen AI capability can give you that base pizza, you still need to contextualize it, and there is a human intervention which is required, right? What would be foolhardy is to just start rolling out an output from a Gen AI tool directly into your customer base, right? So that's, I think, something that won't work for us. I believe won't work for any other organization either. So there is still a lot of contextualization which these Gen AI platforms have to evolve with. To be fair to the technology, any large language model, it thrives on data, it thrives on the volumes of data, right? When the volumes of data are still at a nascent stage, its maturity is going to be at a certain coefficient factor, right? So that's where I think human contextualization is still super important, but use cases are all over the place. We see them in corporate functions that need content, we see in collaboration, we see it in research, especially where research is to happen on vast amounts of data. Then you look at a very, very peculiar function, right? And this is a paradox again, is a favorite paradox for me. Now, the moment you talk about an emerging technology, you look at compliance, right? Okay, this is an emerging tech, where is it offered from? Is this service available within the borders of my geography? Where is the data sitting? Where is the data getting processed? Is it therefore compliant to, my regulatory body? Right, under all the circulars that I receive, is this compliant? This is where your focus typically is, right? Now look at the classic case of Gen AI. For a function like compliance, they thrive on their interpretation and their ability to pour over these circulars. Sometimes there is a circular which is a roll up or an addendum to something that has come 2 years back. In 2 years, some of the team has moved on, some of the context has changed, some of the promises that you have made to the regulator, will have had to be delivered because these are the timelines that you have provided there. There is a context to this whole thing, and then you are appending it with the newer addendums that have come on the same circular. For example, let's take the example of, let's say, a cloud circular, or a cyber security circular that comes from an RBI or SAB, right? Now each of these circular can vary anywhere from something that is just a few pages to 100 plus pages. We've also seen guidelines which can go up to 150 pages, 160 pages. Now it's humanly impossible for each. Let's take the classic case of compliance officers in each of the asset management companies. If 10 of them group together, and if each of them have poured over this 130, 140 page circular, and have come with a synthesis, there is always going to be a delta between the interpretation or the understanding of each compliance officer, right? Because there is a human element to it. This is exactly where the ability to synthesize, summarize, and give the insights, from a Gen AI based tool, it's actually very, very helpful to this very set. So while when you introduce emerging tech, you have to be compliant savvy and you have to be wary of compliance. It's a paradox that it is the technology is able to help the very set of people, right, in comply, because it's able to crunch in that sort of circulars and multiple acts and laws that have come over time, and then look at a certain technology and say whether this is compliant or not, and if there is a deviation, where is it. It can throw those base level summaries straight up. So we are also seeing a use case there within the compliance department.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, interesting insight. So, from cybersecurity standpoint, those are some very valid and interesting case studies. From the beefing of cybersecurity, uh, now, what are the risks associated with leveraging AI for for beefing up cybersecurity and replacing with some of the traditional
Yeah.
techniques? Well, we know the advantages are many, but of course there are similar kind of risks which may happen with any of the AI model, and how to prevent that.
Yeah. 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 No, end of the day, the person you see in your mirror is the most dangerous, right? Uh, uh, as they poetically say, that holds good with Gen AI as well, right? It's the risk is more with in whose the human risk associated with Gen AI seems to loom large than the technology itself, right?
Yeah.
In whose hands is the tech being placed as a critical matter? There is a coefficient of risk that differs from one function to one function. There's a coefficient of risk that differs from one human being to another. So human remains centric to the biggest risk when you introduce any new technology. It was the same when internet came into place. It is the same when artificial intelligence came into place or machine learning came into place, right? So the idea of really evangelizing human element of cybersecurity, and how each of the employee, talking of a corporate scenario, how each employee therefore is super critical to ensuring that we don't use the technology for wrong use cases or for purposes beyond the call of the day. That becomes super important, right? The human error or the human intention related issues can loom large, and they alone can be much much larger than the risks that a tech can pose, right? That's one. When I put that aside, then comes the issue of cross leveraging IP. It's very easy to for AI, if you upload something, then it considers it as a learning input, right? It doesn't care whether it is an IP that belongs to 9.9 or Axis AMC or some other organization, right? An input that you place it is input for it. Whether it is an IP, it has an IP, etc., etc., is not something that tool itself can distinguish, right? Therefore, to protect your own IP and your own customer data, etc., it's very critical to know if you are uploading something. It's super critical to be aware of what you are uploaded, but with clear cognizance that you could have an IP breach, right, or a PII data breach, etc. So that's the second major risk that we're seeing. The third thing is, the third thing that we are seeing is cost consciousness, right? Even as the tech can deliver all this, it comes at a cost. The moment, so one is the technology itself, right? The technology itself is not that expensive, at least so far, right? I'm not talking about the Chat GPT or the GPT-4 sort of capabilities. I'm looking at enterprise grade solutions, right? We're looking at an M365 or a Gemini sort of a solution, which is enterprise grade and comes with enterprise grade support. Now, when you get that, it comes with a cost, right? It comes with a cost. And the running of this tech is still your infrastructure, right? While the tech can crunch so much, all this crunching is happening on the back of a certain infrastructure, right? And that infrastructure is still yours, right? And the compute demands of Gen AI can be tremendous, and there's no limit to what Gen AI can demand in terms of resources. So this is where I think we should make each of the functions, each of the teams accountable for how much they sum. There is a cost risk that I see there. So these are the immediate ones on the top of my mind, Jitendra.
No, interesting insight, and you rightly said, I think from user awareness perspective, it's extremely critical, which a lot of time, you know, a lot of issues can be resolved if you have a better user awareness that how to leverage these technologies most effectively. And like you said, the human intervention will be required, and one needs to see at what level it is required, but it has to be there to continuously monitor and evaluate the solution. Vamsi, just one last question to all our IT leaders who are looking to deploy AI-based solution, whether for cybersecurity or for any other processes. What are your tips that can basically help them deploy these solution wisely while also ensuring that the best practices are adopted to secure the information and
Yeah.
to get meaningful and intelligent insights.
Sure. So I think one of the first things is to look at enterprise grade capabilities. When you're looking at AI, it's easy to fall prey for open source and all the free utils that are available today in the market. For all of us on this call, I'm sure people who have children. I'm pretty sure your son or daughter would have written a poem or crafted an essay using the GPT, right? Using the GPT capability. But that's exactly not what you can do in an enterprise, right? So it's important that when you launch new tech, you ensure that you're working with enterprise edition, even if it's an open source technology. It should be the edition that you use should always be an enterprise edition. So this has been a call out. right? So that you have a channel to reach out to, you have a team to connect with and figure out what has gone right, what has gone wrong, and there is a underlying contract that protects you, right? There is a assurance on the other side that, look, all this tech, while it is there, there are disclaimers, etc., you still have a contract underlying, right? So that's super important when large enterprises adopt emerging tech. The risk, the reputation risk is the number one factor on top of the mind, right? I think enterprise grade experimentation is what can be allowed. Whether it is Microsoft 365 if you are a Microsoft customer, or a zero trust platform like a Zscaler, etc. I'm then just throwing some examples. By no means am I saying that you should go with either of these technologies, but I'm just saying that enterprise grade tech becomes a no-brainer. When you want to roll out at large enterprises. So that is one. The second is, even with that, when you roll out, always roll it out in a lab sort of an environment, in a controlled browser isolated environment, meaning it's as good as working in a private network, right? So you're limiting the chances of damage to a very very private and very very circumvented ecosystem, and you're not expanding the landscape. Your landscape of damage is sort of curtailed, should something go wrong. So the idea is to always do this in a browser isolated environment. And thankfully for us today, I see a lot of zero trust platforms. The names are all known to us. Some of them have already launched these browser isolated capabilities, browser isolated test capabilities. So I think that is the sort of environment that I will request IT leaders to invest into. If the investment horizon, or if the clear business case is not yet established, if you're struggling with budgets, you're struggling with how to explain this to a CFO, launch it with a very very short number of people, but pick the right variety from different functions, and put them together with pools of tech talent who can do hands-on exercises in a joint collaborative fashion, right? And that's when business cases will evolve, and you will see success while you have curtailed the whole perimeter of risk.
Great, great, Vamsi. Once again, thank you very much for imparting some great, valuable insights and expertise regarding the contemporary AI landscape in enterprises, and sharing some really great examples and elucidating how AI can be effectively leveraged for some great productivity enhancement as well as some intelligent insights. This interaction has been truly enlightening and enriching, and we trust that the attendees also found this discussion both engaging and rewarding. Vamsi, once again, thank you very much for spending your time. It was
Thank
truly
you.
a delight to have a conversation with
Thank you very much, Jitinder. My pleasure.
you. Thank you. Well, thank you. Thank you very much, Vamsi, once again. And continuing our dialogue, we are delighted to introduce our next speaker, Arvinderjeet Singh Dadwal, who serves as the Director of Sales Engineering for India and SAC at Comwalt. As the Sales Engineering Director for Comwalt India and SAC, Arvinderjeet spearheads technical sales engagement from strategy to the rapid integration of Commvault's latest technology offerings and the simplicity of cloud solutions into the pre-sales team to deliver the best solution and services for customers and partners. Having spent close to 25 years in the tech industry, Arvind Jeet is passionate about the impact of disruptive technologies on businesses, especially around data management and protection. A Commvault veteran, Arvind Jeet has successfully managed the sales engineering team for North India, expanded the sales engineering team across SAC, and grew the global system integrator engagement to 6 Indian GSIs. He helped establish Commvault Central SE shared services team for APGS well. With strong leadership, he advises CXOs on their IT journey. Arvinderjeet holds a bachelor's in engineering from University of Baroda. A very warm welcome to Arvinderjeet, and we would love to hear your perspective on how to fight AI with AI, and how to build a cyber resilient organization with AI-powered recovery. A very warm welcome to you, sir, and over to you.
Thank you, Chetendra. Appreciate those kind words. So, good afternoon, everyone. As Chetendra said, my name is Arvinder, and I lead the pre-sales teams in Combol. So today I'm going to talk brief about the cybersecurity, what a customer features in the environment, and how can we make sure that what are the challenges happen. So if you look at the data is everywhere. So data is getting generated in a lot of places. It's getting generated in your data center, in your cloud. It could be on your devices or on the endpoints. So the concern of the organization is that how do I protect all this data which is getting generated in multitude of places? Okay. Now since it's in multiple of places, that means my threat surface is also is very large. So there are very, very high chances that somebody might try to get in, and it'll be very easy for them to get in because there are multiple ways that they can try to get inside. I have multiple of avenues through which a person could decide to come in, and it will be very hard to construct them. With the AI now coming on the scene, it's become even much more technically challenging since AI also is being used by the threat actors, and they are being very, I would say, uh, uh, they are being very innovative about it, how they're using these tools in the places. I'm sorry about that. They're using these tools. So what is happening is 85% of the security professionals are saying that AI being used, and even the script kiddies nowadays are using AI to generate new attacks and try to get in and get some more information and keep the data, trying to find way of making money. And again, with the hybrid chaos, I'm sure there's not a single customer who says I only remain on-prem, except for certain BFSIs, but you definitely would be having some data set running in your cloud. Again, many of the organizations don't have a single cloud vendor. They have multiple of hyperscalers. So you could be running on more than one cloud, looking after this data set, making sure that now all the perimeters is covered and all these different cloud sites, plus in your data center, plus the endpoints. It's not a small job. So today what's happening is now the customer is not looking at just protecting his data. He's saying, I need to be resilient, cyber resilient. So tomorrow, if I will have somebody would be able to break in or not, it's a question of when it happens, how fast am I able to come back up, right? So cyber resiliency now equates to business resiliency. If you're not able to come back up after an attack, that means the systems are not online for that amount of time. You are losing business, right? Uh, that is why it is very, very important that you have multiple of tools in your place, which definitely would give you say, but these are also the proactive and the predictive and autonomous, because you don't want multiple of people sitting over here and running or maybe looking after these tools to do it. So uh, this graph is something which we had created using the information from MITRE CRF, Cyber Resiliency Execution Framework, and the National Institutes of Standards and Technology Cyber Framework. So basically, there are three pillars in there: risk, readiness, recovery, and it's a rinse and repeat exercise. So even after you have gone through all this, you again come back to the first point and again start doing everything what you have done the last time. This is something which never stops. This is something which never ends. Right? So just doing a deep dive on this, starting with the risk. The first thing is identification of you have got a huge amount of data set in your environment. Okay, be it your data center or your hybrid cloud or the endpoints. Now, the company needs to decide which of this data is important for me. Correct. For depending on the importance of the data, I would maybe give a certain priority to that data set. So which I want to protect more, which I need to take care, and which is a sensitive data, which is a company IP. I want to do a protection in a different way. Data which is run of the mill, getting generated by IoT devices and will be stored only for a very small amount of time. You might not want to give it the same set of priority. Okay, you might want to back it up once in a year, once in 24 hours, and maybe leave it on a lower storage with a lower retention time. Now we have government regulations are also coming into a picture over here. So we have digital personal data protection. So we have Digital Personal Data Protection Bill 2023, which has been passed by both the laws. Excuse me, which has been passed by both the houses. So that it's going to be enacted very, very soon, right? So as per DVDP, which is modeled very much on the GDPR, you need to know all the information, what you have stored for a customer in your data set, okay? Just to give you an example, let's say a telco company, somebody goes to a telco company and says, I'm porting my number from your telco to telco B. I want you to remove all reference wherever am I appearing in your records. Now you can imagine a telco having petabyte of records and trying to make sure that wherever that user name is appearing or user details are appearing, I need to remove all of it. It's not simple. It's not easy, correct? In a database, I can run a query and get that. But a lot of this information is a part of the unstructured data set. That's where we get bogged down. How do we get this information? And then if I want to maybe move or delete that data set, how do I deal with it? Do I have the right tools to do it? Okay. With the PII information also now coming into a picture, I need to make sure wherever the PII information is appearing in whatever the documents, those documents are kept in the right location with the right access, and everybody doesn't have access to it. Okay, because if you again you have a cyber attack and your files are lying as it is without any right access control on it, it'll be very, very easy for that person to just pick up the data out from there and send it back to his center control center, command center. So before the cyber attack happens, there are multiple ways, especially the cyber deception, which can help a customer know when a person is trying to get in. So before even he gets in, he downloads his payload, he installs his payload over there. There are ways of using a cyber deception where we can find that even before he is sniffing it out your infrastructure, finding a ways to get in. So this cyber deception would help a customer know proactively, I have something, somebody, some people trying to get in. Now, once it's identified, that information is sent to your SIM or a store in your data center. Then the security team, depending on your standard operating procedures, you can define, okay, what's the next step of action do we need to take? Maybe there's a port open over there. That's why you were sniffing, you found that port which is open. Now I need to close that. Okay. Maybe it could be my application which is on that network does not have the right ACLs installed on it. That's why somebody was able to get in. Okay, I need to close that. So these are the tricks. These are the information which the cyber deception tools would flag it and give it to you. Then basis that you can decide the next step for going forward. Next is the recovery readiness. There was a study. We had just had a recent CTO join in, so he was interacting with the cyber insurance company in Europe. So cyber insurance company initially, that was a black card because nobody knew how do we put a value on our data. If you have a person or a cyber attack in a data center, how do you put a value to it? Okay, what's a number? So the underwriters did the job, whatever they're supposed to do. It took them some time because they also wanted to collect some data before they can finalize what the actual numbers would look like, right? They said the first thing, so they had a top 5 thing which they wanted each of these company to implement, and they said the first important thing is continuous testing of your DR drill. Having your DR in place plus continuous testing, that's the most important part. That doesn't seem to be this small thing could be so important, but it definitely is. The problem is when you have a cyber attack, if you talk to any organization, if you say we've got a DR plan in place, yes, everybody says they have got a plan in place. How many times have you tested it? Maybe once a year. How much data set you test it for? Maybe 3, 4 applications. What happens if you have cyber attack, everything goes down? The whole data center is toast. Now tell me how fast and how much data would you be able to recover? What are the RTOs and RPOs are you looking at over here? Nobody knows those answers. Maybe I don't need to recover all my data set, but have I also done exercise where I find out, I said that, okay, these are my critical applications. When I want to bring it up, how much time it's going to take, how much time my business would be down, and where will I bring it up? Please remember, once you have a cyber attack in your data center, that data center is toast. That means getting a clean machine would not be that easy. It will not be that easy. And going through your servers and the network devices and the other devices and finding out which are the clean ones. So maybe cleaning them is going to take a huge amount of time. So it's not going to be that easy. That's where we come in, and we have started a very new service which is called something very similar to Clean Room. So, excuse me, if you have a cyber attack and you have lost your data and you are recovering your data from your DR site or your copy wherever it is, we provide you a clean room where you can do a cloud burst. So basically what it means is when I'm doing a recovery, usually my systems are not designed for recovery, right? When I want to do a recovery of, because usually the recovery is what? Maybe one server, two server, but when I'm doing a multiple or hundreds of server at the same time, you require a big amount of resource over there. So the cloud burst basically uses the elasticity functionality of of a hyperscaler and provision multiple of these VMs on the go, looking at what is the requirement, how much do I need to spin up so I'm able to recover hundreds of VMs or maybe hundreds of terabytes of data as fast as possible. And once it's done, you decommission it. Right? The second is what data is safe to recover. The default timeline, what they say is that if you have a cyber attack, it means the payload was there for around 200 plus odd days. It was sitting over there looking at your data, maybe even reading data, sending it back to its control and command center, and then it started the encryption piece, right? 200 days, my backup copy retention would be what, 30, 60, 90, maybe even a year, but would I recover from a 1-year-old backup copy? Does it make sense? It doesn't. If I do a recovery from 1-year-old copy, that means uh, I am done. What about all the data which got generated a year after that, right? So all that data is toast. So what we also need to do is the backup copies which we are backing up, we also need to run a malware scan on top of it to make sure my copies are not infected. So when I do a recovery, it does not have any malware inside it. Correct? It should be a clean copy. So even if there is a malware, the malware should be flagged, the file should be flagged. So when I'm doing a recovery, that specific file should not be restored. So only the clean files or the clean data would get restored. So you don't need to worry about uh, uh, any malware getting restored over there. So coming back to the same diagram what we had done installed earlier. So if you look at the feature set, what we spoke about in all these three different pillars of risk, readiness, and recovery. So in the data classification, we are basically using context sensitive switches, plus we are also using the machine language at the backend to find out what kind of data set do you have, and if you have any PIA information, or you can also define what information you want to look inside your data set. To find the threat intelligence, threat scan is a decoy deception, cyber deception tool. You can deploy decoys around your crown jewels. So the chances of the cyber attacker hitting your crown jewels as per the probability would be much higher compared to he coming directly onto your crown jewel. So once it hits the decoy collects all the information, sends it back to your SIM. And from there, the security team takes these step further depending on their standard operating procedures. We have also got anomaly detection. This basically starts directly from the client. So even when the backup is happening, what it does is it looks at the files, look at the IO pattern, and tell you if there are any unusual behavior happening on the client. Because when you start encrypting your data, there are high IOs generated because there are a lot of read and write which are happening. So those gets flagged off, the client gets flagged off, and again an alert is sent to the defined distribution list or maybe admin or the security team, and then again depending on the problem, next steps can be taken. Then we have the automated tools which allows us to do a capacity forecast and the load balancing too. So if the systems are getting heavily loaded, automatically it'll do the load balancing between multiple systems. So your backup or the recovery can be sent to the other systems which are lightly loaded. Clean room and the burst recovery gives you the functionality that whenever you want to do a recovery of hundreds of terabytes of data, we are able to do it much faster by provisioning and setting up the infrastructure on the fly. Okay, which will help you do it very fast. So there, the manual intervention would be least. Your team would be then be working on the more important task at the hand, because at this point of time, it's all hands on deck, and whatever the people you have in your data center, you'll find that there are very few, very less compared to the amount of work which you definitely required at that point of critical time. We also have a co-pilot called Ali, which again is integrated with the ChatGPT like tool at the backend. So like Vamsi was saying, it gives, you have huge amount of data and you want to trawl through all that data set and find out the synopsis. So this basically also does something very similar to that, especially if you have a huge amount of documentation. Now, nobody wants to go and go through the documentation, read through, find out how the product works, or maybe if they get stuck and find out how to do some certain thing in the documentation. It's not very easy, and many a time the documentation itself is not very self-explanatory. So here our copilot called Arlie. Here you can give a search like, for example, recovery, okay, recovery RTO, or maybe replication. You just type in a sentence. So there is NLP also being used over here. You can just type a sentence and it'll find out what exactly you want to do, and it'll give you top 5 different options. What is it exactly you're looking at and how it's to be done, and then what are the links to the documentation which will allow you to do that. You have a problem, something is not running properly, something is giving an error. Again, this is the error code. It'll give you 5 different options. Okay, these are the things you can try out to make sure that you are able to come out the error and come out with. You want to write your own code. Okay, so this can also help you generate your own APIs. So it will generate the JSON file for you and also show you the response file, what you should be getting if you run this code within your code snippet, whatever you might have. So coming to the end of it, if I have to look at it, I would say that at the Commvault Cloud, we have created a new standards for the cyber resiliency. We got a best security, especially for a hybrid cloud environment, and that's what we are seeing most of the customers are right now. And the kind of accelerated recovery what we can give due to the innovations and integration with the different cloud vendors, that's a best out there. And we have also integrated a lot of AIs and ML and NLP inside this in the software, which allows a customer to do a lot of things all by themselves and with just a hand of a click. And they don't need to go to the documentation or maybe even have a look at maybe call up the support center to find out how exactly it has to be done. So with that, I come to an end. Thank you. So any questions? I can see there are a couple of questions in the chat. So Jatinder, there are 2 questions in the chat. Should I take it or would you want to wait later on?
Please go ahead. Yeah, Vamsi had to leave because of some urgent meeting, but please go ahead and take those questions. So question number 1
Okay,
is how
so
do we?
these are more for
I'll
right. So these
just
are
want
more for Vamshi, I would say.
You can please take it ahead. I'm absolutely fine. I'm muting myself. You can take it ahead.
Okay, so the question is from Ravindra Srivastav, and the first one is how do we address potential ethical concerns related to the generation and use of synthetic data, particularly in sensitive domains? Very good questions, Vamshi. Okay, so let me try to be frank with you. There's no direct answer to it, okay? Because the thing is, there's something which is still evolving, and even now, European Union is the first one off the block who have got some guidelines of how the generative AI should be used. But are they the final ones, or are they best? I wouldn't say that because, like I said, it's evolving and a new technology. It will take some time for everyone to come to grips with it and find out where are the stumbling blocks, where are the big holes which we need to be careful for, and what kind of guardrails we need to have around it. So I wouldn't be able to. So just to give, I think you also would have read this that somebody was trying to sue Microsoft because it was saying that you have gone through all our, sorry, Google, they were you've gone through all this data to train your Copilot, right? So if you look at it, they definitely have gone through that data without taking any kind of uh, clearance from the users. It definitely looked like you can go with a lawsuit in US, but then again, I don't know if that's since again it's a new technology. This is a way they started it. This is the way they trained the model. Would you be able to take it to a court and stand it there in the court of law? I don't know. I don't have a right answer for it. It'd be good to know the other folks' view on this. How do they see it as? Second is how do we assess the performance and reliability of generative AI model, particularly in terms of output quality? Again, a very good question because again, I have two. Let's say I take two copilots, okay, from different vendors. I train them on the same model set. When I run a query against them, I'm dead sure the answer will not be same. Just like we say that Vamshi was talking about, usually when a person goes through something, let's say even if you read a book, you give it to two people, or you maybe read a novel, you ask them to summarize it, and the summary for both would be very different, right? Because the way they see it, it would be there will be multiple filters in both the people, okay, in how they view whatever the author was trying to present to them. Here also, I believe there would be filters, but they will be based more on how they have been programmed, and how they are supposed to look at that training data set and come to a conclusion. Okay, what are the algorithms for coming to a conclusion? I don't know. Again, how would you say whose quality is better? Again, a very good question, but I'm again up in the air. What's the right answer? I don't know. Okay, so Kasiraja Thanga has question. Google form is blocked by my org, hence I'm not able to fill the brief. Okay, that's for you, Jatinder.
I request my team to just look into it. Please see, I think there are some issues. Or maybe the team, you're requested to send the feedback form separately to all participants.
Okay.
That would also help.
Right. So,
Well,
just as a ending note,
yeah.
we also have a shift event happening in Mumbai. So, for the folks who are based in Mumbai, it's happening on Friday from 9:30 to 5:30 in the evening in Hotel Lalit. So, if I would ask you, please register yourself and come over there. If you're not able to, please drop it over there, and we can, if you want, we can continue this discussion over there. I would be definitely in that session. So I hope to see you over there. Thank you, Chatinder. Over to you.
Yeah. Thank you, Arvinder. Thank you very much for sharing some great insights. And like you said, the cyber resilience starts before the attack and never ends. And not only like Vamsi also discussed, just to reinstate the our panelists' thoughts here. The while efficient tools are also needed, the right user behavior and how these tools are operated in an AI-driven world with best practices, that's extremely important. And you all are subject matter experts; you would know it better. With that, I would just like to sign off and thank you very much once again to all our panelists. It was lovely interacting with you, and we look forward to host you once again. Hope you found this session useful. Thank you, Arvinda, once again. Thank you.
Thank you, Chetendra, and thanks everyone once again. Thank you.
Thanks.